the Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by the Green Deco, making your garden beautiful.
Hello and welcome back to the Potty Plotters Plotcast podcast. This is episode 32 and I'm Julia.
And I'm still Elaine.
And this week we're going out and about on our plots to have a look at what we think is the changing face of allotments. But you'll have to judge that one for yourself.
Except this is actually audio, Julia, so how are people going to see our faces?
Well, you've written it down.
Okay,
we're talking it through. We can be descriptive, can't we? You're very descriptive.
Let's be Enid Blyton and all that. Right, okay then, so what else?
And before we carry on though, we need to tell people how to get in touch with us. So go on, over to you, Elaine.
Okay then, this could be a good memory test, but Facebook, Instagram and Twitter at Potty Plotters. It's almost like we should have a little dance to this, shouldn't we? TikTok at The Potty Plotters. Email us, naughtycorner at pottyplotters.uk, or check out our website, pottyplotters.uk. Thank you.
Well done, Elaine. And on that note, we have had someone email into us. We've had Kevin Banton email saying, loving the podcast, keep them up. And if you fancy dropping us a line, go on. Do it. Just
actually,
do it. We do answer.
We do. We're not always right. Yeah. Well, I am, but we're not always right, maybe.
No.
But thanks for Kevin for getting in touch. And let's everybody go for it.
Contact the Potty Plotters anytime on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram at Potty Plotters, or email naughtycorner at pottyplotters.uk.
So, Elaine, what have we been up to this week?
Well, it's been a week and a half. Well, actually, on the Sunday, I said to you, this week will be a fortnight in a day, I'm sure, and it was. So what we've done is, if you recall, we took down a greenhouse and we filmed that.
Yes.
So that could be quite funny. But we'll wait and see because that's being worked on. And then we've been picking and giving away flowers. If you remember our friend Tina, she's been across, we're giving them to her. We've been giving away produce to the fact that still people are running away and shutting the curtains when I approach with a carrier bag full of stuff. I've been making gin. You'll get a speaking part in a minute. Okay, so I've been making gin. I've been filling the freezer with bits and pieces and meeting people with allotment problems and adventures that they want to get involved with. So, we did put another greenhouse up as well, didn't we?
Oh, yeah, we put another greenhouse up. And actually, it was Kev Plot too.
Oh, gosh.
And we're going to talk to him later on in this podcast. But as well as all that you've been doing, I've been out. Well, I was out pruning trees for plot holders on site. So it's a good job you weren't here because I know you'd have had your camera because I was like a monkey up that tree pruning it. So, I've been doing a plum tree for Jan on site.
That's nice. Yeah. Well done, you.
Thank you.
And there is lots of fruit because I've already seen everywhere. But we'll talk about those in a future weeks. What we do want to talk about is... what?
Cultivated blackberries.
Cultivated blackberries, okay then. Right, well, I've picked loads and a lot of them are in the freezer. If I told you that I've actually done blackberry gin, you wouldn't be surprised, would you? But I have done blackberry gin. And I think that they freeze remarkably well. But what I like about cultivated blackberries is they're like 2 and 3 times bigger than ordinary blackberries that you can pick on the roadside.
Yeah.
And I'm sure it'll bring back a lot of memories for a lot of people as kids when we used to go out picking blackberries and eating them. And then you find, don't you? You find that one that's got a little worm in it. Oh, my mouth waters.
Don't the cultivated blackberries have the ones?
I don't know. I have to freeze them, and if they're in there, they'll be very cold.
But we have seen people out and about because we've got a big hedge at the back of the allotment and a big blackberry hedge leading up to the allotment. We have seen people delving in there and picking the blackberries. But what is the problem with kind of normal blackberries?
Nothing, except they're a little bit smaller and they're very prickly as well on the stems.
Yeah, the prickliness.
Oh, it makes a massive difference when you can go to your own cultivated blackberries and pick them without having... you do get very red, sticky hands, but you don't get prickled to pieces.
No.
So all I would say, Julia, is that I know that we can buy them, and that's great, but what I would do is actually take cuttings now. So it's dead easy if it is that you look at the stalk itself. So the stalk, I'm indicating there, my hand was going
we are
from left
audio,
to right.
not visual, so nobody can see.
Yes. So what happens is that stalk will eventually fall onto the floor and it self-sets and it grows its own roots. But what you can do is simply cut it above a leaf, okay, and what I then do is I strip down the leaves, just leaving 2 on the top, and literally cut it the stalk at an angle like at a V, and then just pop it into some multi-purpose compost and watch what happens. It will grow.
When you're talking about the stem that you're cutting, you're talking about the new growth, aren't you? Not the ones that have had the blackberries on this year.
No, it's the new growth that's got no blackberries, but you will find that it's got loads of leaves.
Brilliant.
Have a go.
I will.
Gin.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by the Green Deco.
So now we've done the cultivated blackberries, which I'm going to go and pick because mine are loaded. I'll go and pick them after this podcast. But another thing, and we don't like to use the C word so early in the season, but we are going to. And what is it, Elaine?
Christmas, Julia.
Christmas, because we're already thinking about our tummies for Christmas.
Yes.
And what we're thinking about is our Christmas taters. So a lot of people will have seen them in the garden centres and in the shops, that you can get your potatoes for planting now, your seed potatoes for planting now, and it's the perfect time to do it. Now, we've seen people do this a lot on the site, where they see them in the shops and they bring them back to the allotment, and just like normal earlier in the season, they put them in the ground. But we don't do that with Christmas potatoes, do we, Elaine?
No, but why not? Because it's so easy.
Yeah, well, there's 2 reasons really. First of all, they'll be in the ground quite late on in the season, so we're much more at risk of flooding and water damage to the potatoes. And also we're at risk of a frost then, which is no good for potatoes either, so that will kill them off and stop them growing. So what we do, we get a tub. Anyone can get like a bag for life or an old compost bag, fill it about 6 inches full of compost. I've been using my homemade compost for this because we found in trials in the past that is the one that produces the most potatoes. We're using 3 seed potatoes that we bought in the garden centre, and it's a Pentland Javelin, so it's always usually an early or a first early that are planted for Christmas. And then we're going to top them with a layer of compost, and then we'll leave them outside for the next couple of weeks until the weather starts to change. And when it starts to either get really, really wet or we start to notice the temperature drop, we'll move them inside into the greenhouse. And that's really important, that people move them into somewhere that's going to protect them.
But what about when the tops of the taters, because as soon as they start to grow, then the tops will start to show through that bit of compost that you just put on the top?
So what you want to do is top that up, so you cover the greenery until you can't see it anymore, and you keep doing that every time it comes through. You keep covering until
so you're covering the new growth.
You're covering the new growth all the time until you get to the top of your bucket, your bag or your compost bag, and then you stop and then just allow it to grow. And we don't water them while they're outside because we should have enough natural water. But once you've got them inside your greenhouse, perhaps you'll have to monitor it, but probably about once a week is enough.
So why are we doing bought potatoes instead of just like what producer Gareth gives us, which are those taters that have got huge chits on, CHITS?
Well, we could have done them and there'd have been no problem in a bag actually, or a bucket, because we're not worried about any contamination, and they'll produce something fine. But we know that the varieties that we're growing are disease free. We know that what we're going to get out of them. So if you've got a few straggly ones in the bottom of your cupboard, Gareth, you can have a go at planting them. But we've been to the garden centre and bought some proper seed potatoes.
I suppose what we could do is a little bit of an experiment, Gareth's versus bought ones, and see which actually come out the most productive.
Yeah.
He's a producer, that's production, so he should actually win.
He should have more, shouldn't he? Yeah.
The Potty Plotters Podcast, with simple recipes for gluts and guts.
So squashes and pumpkins, Elaine. Can you remember a while ago we planted the squashes and pumpkins at the front of my plot?
And you planted them in muck.
Well, you did. Because none of us would go near it. We made you do it.
It was stinking, wasn't it? But I have seen them. So that's why I was a little bit quiet, which is unusual. Yeah. But I did have a little peep at the squashes just yesterday. Yeah. Now, this weather doesn't suit every plant that we've got, but by crikey, they are incredible, aren't they?
Yeah. Squashes and pumpkins absolutely love the water, so the more water, and we've planted them in manure, so there's loads of nutrients there for them, and they are as happy as Larry, whoever he is, but they are happy. and like you say, when you peep underneath, there are lots and lots of pumpkins growing. So what I would say is, I mean, the ones that we planted them in containers, and they're growing across the concrete at the front of my plot, which I inherited. If I could, I'd get it up, but they're just travelling there, so the pumpkins are just sitting on the concrete, and they're quite happy. There's no problem with that. If you were growing them on an open plot, or if the pumpkins were growing on the soil, just raise them off the soil. So put something like a brick or a slab or something underneath, so that the compost doesn't rot on the soil. But other than that, they're really, really happy, and this season we haven't had to water them at all.
Which is incredible, really, because usually we are throwing water everywhere down there, aren't we?
Yeah.
So we should end up with some really good sized ones as well.
Yeah, we will.
Okay. Will we have them for Halloween, do you think?
Definitely.
Okay. And have you ever grown them from your own seed? So you kept the seed from a plant and then planted them on again?
No, I've never grown them from my own seed, and the reason I've not done that is because they do tend to cross-pollinate. So if you want to guarantee what you're going to get the next year, you need to probably buy one that's come through the seed suppliers process.
Okay.
Because I have had, I had some that somebody had obviously saved, and they were meant to be Turk's turban, but when they came out, they were a very strange turban if they were a Turk's turban, because something had obviously cross-pollinated with them. So
you're
that's
not
fine.
recommending it?
Well, no, you can do it, because if that's what you want, if you're not bothered about what you produce, give it a go.
Bit tricky.
Hints and tips for shortcuts to success. The Potty Plotters Plotcast.
We've got some hints and tips for this week then, Julia, and the first one is I've just been out onto my plot and I've been picking these beautiful French beans. They're actually dwarf beans, but they were so easy to pick, and all that I'm going to do is to say to you that if you've got, they're just so easy to grow, aren't they? It's ridiculous. But all that I do is, when I get them home, is I put them all at the same length and at the same way. It's not an OCD thing.
Not at all.
I just can't. I just have to do it this way. And then, having put all the tops together, I just slice them across the top. Then I put all of the ends together where they've been attached to the plant and chop them off there. And then pop them in the bag into the freezer. Done.
No blanching.
No, whoever she is, she can stay out of it. It's going straight in that freezer. And you can do loads of them like that.
And they don't come out soggy?
No.
No.
Try it.
Yeah, I think that might save me 5 minutes of my life.
It's amazing. You know, if you were listening to these podcasts, Julia, you could get some hints and tips from them.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by the Green Deco.
This episode of the podcast is being brought to you by the Green Deco, suppliers of plants and shrubs to the trade and public at unbelievable prices. Find them by searching online for the Green Deco, and they are linked to us via our social media. Don't forget, if you'd like to work with us or sponsor us, you can email us naughtycorner@pottyplotters.uk. So, Elaine, let's get up now and go and have a look in the polytunnel and round the plot.
You see, you say that, Julia, like it's dead easy. You know, as you get older, suddenly things don't work, including your knees, and prior warning is not a bad thing. That's all I'm going to say. Because I'm a bit like Miranda as well. That's another thing, that when you get up out of these plastic chairs that I donated to you, my backside sticks in them. I'll be walking around attached to a chair. Not a bad thing, really.
All right then, 5-minute warning. Get yourself up. So we're heading towards the polytunnel. As you can see, Elaine, the dahlias are out and they are looking magnificent.
They are. Actually, I don't think I can beat them. It's not a competition, Julia, so you've not won.
But I think things are looking healthy because of all the rain that we've had.
You've still not won.
All right then. Okay, come in the polytunnel then. I'm sure I can beat you on tomatoes.
I bet you can. That is so funny. That reminds me, That reminds me of the biggest con that ever was last year.
What was that?
When I told everybody that they'd all got to grow them.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Cape gooseberries. You can't beat them.
Yeah, you were very successful with them, weren't you?
Yeah,
and you grew that many that then you had to tell everyone they were the new superfruit.
I think that
they are. Give them away. And they are. They're super and they do look magnificent. Yeah.
Look at that, though. You've got some whoppers down here.
I have.
And they're nearly ready. Do you know how you know when they're ready?
Give them a squeeze.
No. What are you talking about? No, the outside, it goes all papery and see-throughy.
Okay.
And then, as soon as you touch it, it's ready to drop into your hand.
Okay.
That's how you know.
I've got a melon here and it dropped in my hand this morning. So I'm going to take it off and I'm going to let you guys try it. That'll do.
Now then, that's lovely, isn't it?
That'll do for lunch, won't it?
What a beauty.
Thank you.
Yeah, well done, Julia.
Right, as well, look at all these tomatoes. These are dead happy. Gareth, you're growing tomatoes in your little greenhouse, aren't you?
Yeah.
And didn't you say you've had a bit of disaster with your Beefmaster?
A disaster with the Beefmaster?
A disaster
I like
with the
that,
Beefmaster. Yeah. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut him one. And I think the reason he's had problems is because of the size of the Beefmaster that they grow, they do need a lot of moisture going into them. Otherwise, if there's any kind of problem with the flow of water, whatever, they are prone to blossom end rot. And I think the fact that I grow them in the ground means that they can always search out that moisture.
And I love the scaffolding that you put up round about. They've worked a treat, because all the years I've known you, you've strung them up, you've hung them up, you've done everything to try to keep the weight of the fruit upright. Look at that.
That's for you.
I'll keep him going more week, won't it?
Yeah.
Actually, shall I give him this as well and then see how we can handle both?
It balances out, doesn't it? Yeah. Right. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Now what?
I'm looking at your peppers. They're absolutely brilliant, Julia.
Thank you.
I don't think I've ever seen them as good as this.
No, well,
you normally do the long sweet peppers.
I normally do the long sweet ones, but I wanted some with a kind of thicker wall to them, so they were juicier and fleshier.
Okay.
And I decided to grow these bell pepper ones, and I've got one that kind of turns to red, called Beauty Bell, and I've also got one on the other side. I think I've harvested them all off these ones, but this one was called Ariana, and these are absolutely beautiful, and they have a really thick wall on them. So yeah, it's been a very successful time in the polytunnel this year. I mean, things have been very slow to ripen, and we've had a lot of people asking advice on how to ripen their tomatoes and plants and peppers and things. So what I have been doing with the peppers, I've been removing some of the leaves from the canopy just to open it up to let the sun at them for what sunshine we've had. I've also been de-leafing the tomatoes, so as you're going up the plant, the leaves start to die back anyway, and you can see that they exhaust themselves. So I've just been taking the leaves off just so that the tomatoes can see the sunshine a bit more when it comes. Elaine calls these tomatoes cow's teats. I wonder why, but they are beautiful. They're a plum tomato, but I've been using them like slicing tomatoes like the Beefmaster because they have a very similar taste.
Now, what I'm smelling, Julia, is actually what's around here on the floor.
Yeah.
What is it?
It's basil, and I started growing the basil because we like basil, but then I kind of lost control of it. So I allowed it to go to flower because the bees love the basil flowers, but also it is one of the natural deterrents for the whitefly. So that's why I've allowed it to grow. It is. It's beautiful.
When you walk in, that's actually what you smell when you come in.
And I've also got loads of marigolds in the ground next to the tomato plants, again to protect from the whitefly in here. And soon we'll be letting the flowers go to seed, and we'll be taking the seeds and saving them.
So it's fair to say that you have had an abundance of vegetables and fruit and flowers this year in your polytunnel. So you've done experiments that have all worked, it's fair to say.
Yeah.
And now I can see that you're actually starting to grow carrots. So autumn carrots you've already set.
Yeah.
So you're making constant use of the polytunnel.
Yeah, so I'm thinking probably putting some brassicas in here. The potatoes will move in here eventually, and I'll be looking at winter salad crops as well. So it's something that you use all year round.
The Plotcast Podcast with the Potty Plotters.
We've talked about him a lot.
We insult him.
Yes, but we've lured him here to the podcast in the beer garden because we promised him a cup of tea, and he thinks he's here for a cup of tea, but now we've rigged him up, or Gareth's rigged him up, and we're going to talk to him about allotments.
And we are going to announce who it is by saying it is
Kev Plot 2.
So welcome, Kevin, and thanks very much, under protest, for joining us on our podcast.
You're very welcome.
We know you are quite shy, but to be fair, you talk a lot about allotments because you have been on allotments for a long time, haven't you?
Yeah, I suppose my dad always had an allotment, so as a kid I was always running around allotments, and I see allotments really as an inherited problem rather than a pleasure. It's sort of in your DNA. But yes, I miss it if I don't do it. And it frustrates me when I do. So that's about where I am with it, I suppose.
So how old were you when your dad had an allotment? What were your first memories of it all?
Well, he used to have the garden that nobody bothered with at the bottom of the garden, and that was when before I could walk, I suppose. So he always was in there, and we was always doing things in there. A good friend of mine, his dad had an allotment on 7 Fields, which is in Littleover in Derby. And most of my childhood was spent chasing, upsetting, worrying people down on 7 Fields allotments. And that's it really. So it's just something that I have to do.
And why did you I remember my dad having an allotment, and I grew up learning all things from him. What did you learn from your dad on the allotment?
Yeah, basically not to touch anything important. Which carried on well into my late 30s, really. He was the chap that knew everything and didn't tell you anything. So anything you learned, it was by accident or by you saw it, you craftily watched it. But that's how it was, yeah. So I was always the labourer on site, and he did all the delicate things. And if I did anything, it was never good enough, not right. But he'd put it right, and that was it. So that's how it was.
And did your dad grow to feed all the family?
Oh gosh, yeah. We used to the harvest, all the apples, all the pears definitely. They were all stored in big tin chests in sand that were dried, and then we'd carefully have these pears over the weeks and months, normally through Christmas and just before and just after, and that was that. Always the mint came out the garden. Pretty much what the garden grew was what we ate. And that was how it was. And I do tend to do the same now. I had to laugh. I did chicken tikka the other night for tea. I had it with runner beans. I had it because I got a fridge full of runner beans, and I do like runner beans. And actually, they did go well together. But you tend to eat what comes off the plot, because it's easier to eat it than it is to freeze it or mess about with it. And then obviously the stuff you can't eat, you do freeze. But yeah, I try. I get off on not spending money. And so, but I have no problem spending money on gardening. Why that is, I don't know. But then when it comes to the greengrocers, I can grow that for less. And a lot of the veg I grow is what I see as the pricey stuff at the supermarket, and that's the stuff I like to grow, because I think I've saved myself £2 here or £1 or whatever.
So Kev, do you think you're a good grower? Because you were saying that your dad wouldn't share his secrets with you.
Yeah.
We share our secrets with you, and you don't listen.
No, I don't listen. No, I don't think I am. No, I do. Whatever I do, it's instinctively almost, I think, and I listen to you and then think, nah. And then just do it how I've done it before in the past. Yeah. So, yeah, any seed like the seed thing, you tend to do a lot of things into trays where if wherever possible, I go for an hole in the ground and put it in there. And I think, and you'll not persuade me on that, if it can be done that way, that's the best way.
Yeah, but then you've always got plan B, haven't you?
Plan B, yeah. Then
come to us, because we've got them in containers that have
but
always worked.
The stuff in containers, though, this year, you were your own demise, actually, because I've now got a little greenhouse.
Oh, yes.
And so, yes, watch this space going forward, so I can grow my own plants. And the love, when you get, little tiny seeds, size of a grain of sand, and you plant it and you water it and it comes up and you end up a cabbage bigger than your head out of it with less than 3 months' time. I just find it amazing, and therefore that's what I get out of it.
It's not just vegetables that you grow, though, is it? You do fruit as well.
Oh yeah, I love my fruit. Yeah, I love raspberries through the winter. Yeah, but I think that if you can, they're a good source of antioxidants and all that business. They're expensive in the winter and they're not as good, but you can freeze your own raspberries, chuck that on your porridge. You've got a nice breakfast that costs or very little to it, but it's good for you.
And are you competitive, Kev?
Very.
We do have competitions on site, don't we, with you?
Yeah.
And the only rule that we have in the competitions is that we all have to beat Kev Plot too, because it don't matter who else wins as long as it's not you.
So long as it's not me, yeah. But I think that's a healthy, what's name to it? And I often wind you lot up to make you, you would be, your mundane efforts are brought into line, and it gives me something to go at. And if I don't win, that was a good laugh. And well, I've never won yet because you pair of cheats always change the rules just before it comes time to vote. I'll never forget that sunflower. It's the biggest sunflower. God, when that thing came down.
What was that all about, Kev? Do tell.
Well, I grew a sunflower. Now I really put hours into this sunflower. I dug an hole as big as a dustbin. I filled it with raw muck. I got the and I put a cloch over it that was 4 foot tall with a plastic roof on it, and I got it up there. It was massive, but my problem was it was ahead of everybody else's by the fact it matured about 3 weeks before yours lots did. So when you come to measure, my poor old man was drooping quite terribly. And so therefore I got beat again. But in all fairness, if the head of mine had fell on yours, it would have killed it.
And on that note, Kev, I think it's time to make a cuppa, isn't it?
Definitely.
Hey, how are you button up squash before we go? We're supporting that for you.
Very big. I need a hand to get them off site. They are big, yeah, very big. I don't think I didn't intend to do that. That was an accident. And but I blame Mucky Mabel.
Yeah?
Because, I put so much muck in those raised beds. And as a consequence, I've ended up with a butternut squash is bigger than my fridge. I don't know why. I'm going to have a butternut squash party.
We'll wait for the invite then.
You could write invitations on the skin though, couldn't you, Kev?
Well, yeah, you could. But,
well, thanks for your time.
You're welcome.
Yeah, we've not learnt anything, and get a kettle on there.
Right.
Do you know where it is?
Yes.
That's a lesson you've never learned, really, isn't
What's
it?
that?
Where's the kettle?
No, don't have a dog and bark yourself.
Top-notch advice, no Latin included. The Potty Plotters Plotcast.
So we've trapped Kev in the chalet with the other lads from the Tuesday team. If you can hear any muffling, we've not held them hostage or anything. We've just shut the door on them so we can tell you a hint and tip about broccoli. I love broccoli and I grow it on my plot. I know you don't, do you, Elaine?
No, I don't grow it because I don't like the white fly, and netting everything drives me nuts. But I do like to eat it, yeah.
Right, so
the big stuff from the supermarket.
Yeah, so on the seed packets you'll see it called calabrese. So as it grows the big head on the top of the plant, like you would normally expect to see in the supermarket, cut the big head off. Don't pull the whole plant out. You're not going to get any more broccoli. Whereas if you just cut the head off, the big head at the top of the plant, then new shoots will emerge from the side. So you're going to have littler heads coming out the side to chop off later on.
So moral to the story is, just don't take the broccoli plant out.
No.
Leave it.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks again to the Green Deco for sponsoring this episode. And in the next episode, we're going to be talking about flowers.
Yeah, and I want to be talking, since you mentioned flowers, the sunflowers, Julia. Now, I know that Kev has already mentioned them, but I am going to talk to you about mine because I've got some giant ones, but I'll tell you more about it next week.
Everything you do has to be giant, doesn't it?
Not everything. I like little tomatoes.
Okay.
Yeah.
The Plotcast podcast with the Potty Plotters, sponsored by the Green Deco, is an Amberland Media production.